What is up guys, Wraec here with a new video, and today we want to talk about Florabelle and how she just became the meta for Plague Reaper. She is a very interesting hero. She was the first rate up, I believe, and back then I didn't think she was too impressive. Had to say a while later that she then succeeded at convincing me that she's good, and now I think she was in a lot of teams in AFK stage clearing during Season 1. Not that much in Season 2, I have to say. Kind of got lost on the way, I don't know, she didn't make it to the island, she didn't make it to Rustport, but now she's back for the Plague Reaper fight. Found her way through the sewers here apparently, and we can make some decent use out of her, and she's a very good hero, and you definitely want to use her for the top score. So about time we kind of figure out how high you should upgrade her and what she's even used for in that fight. So starting off, she is not on the Graveborn faction tile. The Graveborn faction tile grants us some stats, a bit of healing, and most importantly, whenever the hero on there assists or defeats an enemy, they gain a permanent attack buff. And in this fight we have a lot of enemies. Every single little slime there is an enemy, so you can see all those green tiles under the Carolina there, for example, and of course most importantly under our Cassidy's HP bar, and those are all attack buffs, and those attack buffs are super important. And what Florabelle does in this situation is not even doing a whole lot of damage herself. She can do some damage, she's not a very bad damage dealer, she's actually quite decent, but most importantly she summons minions, and all of those minions, as you can see with the little archer there, have those circling water waves around them. And this is a buff called Tidal Strength that is granted to them by our Cassidy. With every wave she does, once she's Mythic Plus, she grants Tidal Strength to all the heroes along the way, and that includes the summoned heroes like the little helpers of Florabelle. And that results in, well, not much damage for Florabelle because it isn't attributed to her. It is actually attributed to our Cassidy. We get to 15 billion damage on her, which is quite insane. By the way, have to note, the lineup that I use here, the setup, is not created by me. I did some tests, of course, on the Analytica Discord, but this is from Chloe and Bacillus. From Chloe and Puzzle. Bacillus and Aragon, of course, help with the testing, as everybody does. There is just like a bit of a forum, bit of a discussion there always about different heroes. And fun fact, she wasn't even at the top position for the testing on that day. Like, if I remember the discussion there, we were talking about Vala being used pretty soon. We were talking about Nara maybe seeing some use. I was throwing Dunlinger in there. People were laughing at me because, I mean, it's a ridiculous idea. Dunlinger is not quite that great. I still tested it. We can watch that later. And Florabelle was also in the discussion for the purpose that we're going to check out in a second. She has multiple minions, and all of that single minions are fairly interesting. We have a melee minion. We have a minion with like this big, I don't even know what it really is. As like a big pot in the hand that it slams on the ground. We have an archer minion, and all of those minions can actually get a buff from Cassidy. Given that the minions are all in the first 3 abilities, you can actually use Florabelle just with a single copy. So if you have her at Epic, you have all the minions unlocked. There is nothing holding you back from putting Florabelle in the team. She's likely to survive even. The boss doesn't deal that much damage. If you have her upgrade at a higher state, you might have some small advantages. At a Legendary Plus, she earns a Hero Focus, which grants a bit more attack, which is a bit more damage from her. You don't need that, but if you have it, it's kind of good. The Mythic Plus isn't too important. There is one small buff that you can get from that. If you have Mythic Plus +10, she grants 1 summon 27 haste, which is more, which means more attacks, which means more damage. So this would be a small buff. Supreme Plus completely meaningless to us. So you are fine with a single copy on her, which is insane. So how does that really work? Well, our damage comes entirely from Cassidy, and if you watched my recent video you already know that, but Cassidy works in a pretty interesting way, in which that once you have her at Mythic Plus, she grants all allies that are in the way of her wave a buff called Tidal Strength. This is not explained very well here. The Tidal Strength buff is from her ability. She has an ability called Tidal Strength. And this buff is not doing anything really. It's just a marker. And once this ally that has this Tidal Strength buff hits an enemy, Cassidy deals 60% magic damage to the enemy, which is not much. But if you scale the attack on Cassidy by 1000% or something, then this of course becomes quite interesting. It is quite the hit. If you even then upgrade her to +10, then you get Undercurrent. And Undercurrent is another ability that she has that does 300% damage and would stun the enemy, which is not important for us. So that's an additional bit of damage. Pretty cool. So having more minions on the board that all have this buff, of course, massively increases the damage we can deal to the enemy. And this is really what gives Cassidy value, and to an extent gives also Sassia some value. And therefore, this is really the main point for Florabelle. Not even her own damage, which is why you don't need her at a high upgrade state. You are fine if you have at least a Mythic Plus Cassidy, then you can make really good use out of Florabelle. So, that being said, why did I even think that that Dunlinger was a good idea? I mean, we talked about Florabelle, now you saw the team, you can use that, will be great. But why did I think Dunlinger was a good idea? And maybe we can talk about that for a second. So Dunlinger really didn't make it in a whole lot of teams. I saw him in some PvP fights, I used him a bit, some people tried to work pretty well. But he is kind of interesting in that he actually not only can block ults, which I think was actually an upside for this fight. You can have one hero that can still cast ults and then block it for the other ones. And I thought, okay, when your heroes can't do ults, then they will normal attack. Normal attacks are good, because normal attacks trigger the tidal strength buff, and then we get more Cassidy hits. So that was my initial idea, and then I checked it out, and there are some abilities in here, and for example, the Mythic Plus that protects our furthest away non-summoned ally, which I put on Cassidy, of course, gives us some attack, also gives us 20 haste. 20 haste is pretty nice. We can take that. And then there is also this one. Once he casts Echo of Silence with Spellbind active, he grants all allies 50 attack speed. 50 attack speed means more normal attack, so it is pretty juicy. And I thought this would be quite a fun way to give this hero some use, and maybe we'll want to watch the fight if you still are up for it. It didn't do too bad. People said, okay, you are blocking the ults from all the other heroes. This is going to suck. But actually, it didn't. It wasn't quite competitive, I have to say. But given that we were at a little bit of a lower power here, yeah, you can see, by the way, I tested Florabelle as well right here. Kind of interesting. I tested her on the Graveborn tile though, so it was a different setup. Later on it turns out, well, she gets the buffs, it's pretty wasted on her. It's better to put Carolina on there and reposition Florabelle a little bit, so this is basically an adjustment to that. But during the time, I also tested her. I also tested Dunlinger, what was my best fight there. Yeah, I tested it here. This was the formation, furthest away from Cassidy in this case, so she gains the buff. And this is the way it looks. Of course, Dunlinger activating his abilities, blocking on all ults. And beyond that, he really doesn't do too much, I have to say. He's a bit slow, he's a bit sluggish, he's a tank, but doesn't feel tanky. It's like, I kind of have to do another video about him. I think he's probably our worst Celestial. This is kind of a bit weird. I thought he would be quite interesting because he has a super powerful effect that blocks ults, but it just feels like it's over in a second, especially if you look at that at double speed. It's like just, it's there and now it's already gone again. So just feels not impactful enough. The attack speed buff on Cassidy is kind of nice. Get a little bit more ults out there, and overall interesting that we get to a similar result there, even though most heroes can't cast their ult very often. At the same time, I have to say, well, with the frequency that he casts this, there is still an ample amount of time to cast the ult for all of our heroes. So, in a way, the idea of just blocking the ult so there are more normal attacks only takes effect to a very limited extent. And I guess what mostly contributed to this team still doing decent damage, and I mean, it's decent damage, it was with very much so lower upgrade stage or resonance on my heroes. It's mostly that, well, we have this attack speed buff on the Cassidy and all of the other heroes, so we have a little bit more frequency. And still, certainly, Florabelle is the better team, but I just thought it would be a fun idea to try Dunlinger, as most people would have been quite angry if that made it into the meta. Imagine this was the meta. Like, if I made a video where I said, yeah, you need a plus 15 Dunlinger. Just summon that thing to Supreme Plus, otherwise you can't get place 1. That would have been fun. that is also fun to see. And that was my comment, actually. I then said to Discord, yeah, Dunlinger didn't do quite well because it was actually worse than my last attempts before that. You can see on the day before, I still had an attempt with very much so lower resonance, and Lily May that did better. But it still did better than Florabelle is what I said. And then with the new positioning, Florabelle was suddenly meta. So like sometimes, even if it seems like the Florabelle was bad, which in this constellation it certainly does, it's worthwhile to test it a little bit more. And then we got some pretty good results, or some pretty good results were achieved with the team that Puzzle Chloe, Butzelos and Daragon then found. So very much so interesting. I hope you enjoyed this video. Maybe stay tuned for tomorrow's video. Tomorrow I want to do a little bit on a guide on the faction skills, because there is some weird thing going on that might confuse some of you guys with reaching stage 3. That is what we're going to do tomorrow, and I'm planning a little bit of a tier list to do that as well, if you guys care about tier list content. I usually didn't do that, but wanted to give it a try, so we'll see. If you haven't already, so please subscribe to the channel, would make me very happy, and with that, I wish you a great day. We'll see us in the next one.